Hello everyone, how's it going? I'm WoWcrendor and welcome back to another episode of Fishing with Crendor. I believe we're on episode, 39? I think it's episode 39. And today we are being joined by the one, the only, unless somebody else has copied your identity, ItmeJP.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's copied my. There might be some anime person out there that's trying to claim they're Japan. Maybe.
That's true, ItmeJapan.
I've definitely had people join my chat and just be like, "So why are you Japan?" Because
I
they're
never
just
even
not.
thought of that, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Uh,
just casted through the dock. Look at that. I'm
Oh
hacking.
my god. That's backbanned. Wow. What was I gonna say? I was gonna make another thing about your name. Oh yeah, I was gonna say it's me JP. There's got to be an it's me JP out there.
Yeah, but I mean, I took care of him a couple years ago. I couldn't.
All right.
I couldn't stand the S. He's no longer with us. So
That's good. That's good.
yeah. Yeah.
So for everybody that doesn't know, why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you do, all that stuff.
Sure. My name is JP McDaniel. I've been on the internet since around probably 2009, 2010, I think is when I started the first podcast I ever did called ArenaCast, which was a WoW PvP podcast back in the day. And then that kind of led to me working at MLG and kind of a contractor atmosphere type deal, which then eventually led to me working at MLG full time as a StarCraft 2 production host and whatnot. Kind of went around the US doing a bunch of different StarCraft 2 events, hosted BlizzCon one year, and then decided to cold turkey quit eSports and became a full time streamer. I've done shows like State of the Game, Drop Frames, Role Play. And yeah, I've just kind of continued creating content on the internets, and it's worked out.
Huh. I always thought you got started with StarCraft. I didn't know you got started with WoW.
Yeah, WoW was kind of my first entry into I guess where I cut my chops. Is that a saying? Did I just make up a saying?
I think it is. Hold on,
Okay.
let me check. I think
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Get one of the producers on the show to Google
Yeah,
that.
can we
Let us
get
know if it works.
Timmy? Can you Google that?
Yeah, get Tim. I see him over there doing nothing.
Yeah.
I see Timmy over there.
Looks like you were looking for Bust One's chops.
There you go. Bust them chop. Bust
Yeah.
up the. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Timmy.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
I started on WoW. I was a pretty big PvPer back then, in like the season 1 to season 3 era.
Mhm.
And I won't claim full full ownership of getting World of Warcraft on MLG, but on the MLG Pro Circuit, but I was definitely involved in kind of a lot of those conversations and whatnot. So
Oh man.
it was pretty cool to see all that stuff.
Especially like at the forefront of it all.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because streaming back then wasn't, Twitch didn't exist for the most part, so you had to use a lot of like streaming solutions like OctoShape, which everyone loved having to download it.
Shape.
Yeah, it was a peer-to-peer client that you had to download, and it would completely destroy your internet because it was peer-to-peer, right? So,
Mhm.
and it was companies like MLG used that because it was basically free bandwidth that they didn't have to deal with in terms of like charging out the ass, because stuff like Twitch didn't exist back then. So bandwidth was very expensive.
Huh. That's actually pretty interesting. I'll come back to MLG later, but for now, let's talk about just how you got into video gaming in general. Way back, whenever you started, you'd be like 5 years old, getting a Nintendo, whatever it was.
Yeah. I'm trying to think back to like what my first game. It was probably I think it was probably like, I guess one of the earliest memories I have was when I was around 6 or 7. And I have an older brother who's 7 years older than me. And I remember going to a Toys R Us back in its heyday because we had reserved a Super NES, and we walked in. And I remember playing some NES games. I guess I remember playing like whichever Zelda that was back in the original days. That might have just been The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I remember waiting outside in the car. I don't know if it was midnight or I forgot how they did game releases back then. I was probably too young to even know what was going on.
Yeah.
But I remember like waiting outside the Toys R Us and my brother going in and getting this NES, coming out with Super Mario World, and playing that all night. It was probably just like your Nintendo consoles. I remember the day we got like a PlayStation 1, and then Dreamcast. I made a name for myself in high school with the Dreamcast because I was the kid that would burn all the games to the DVDs
Yeah.
whenever kids wanted them. So that was kind of how I made friends that way. But yeah, I've been a lifelong gamer. I guess I really didn't get kind of super addicted until the early StarCraft days, and then from there um, went into the Quake 3 world and kind of got involved in that. Went to QuakeCon a bunch of times, and then stepped foot into World of Warcraft after kind of playing a lot of Dark Age of Camelot. But I was definitely addicted to Dark Age of Camelot. But I think WoW, even though I put thousands of hours into Dark Age, I still think WoW was kind of like when I was truly addicted to an MMO back in the early beta and vanilla days. So, but yeah, been playing games my entire life.
Did you like what was your first PC game then? Was it Dark Age of Camelot or was it StarCraft or like what was it?
My, I guess the first one that I was like truly into was probably StarCraft 1. Because I remember my brother went over to his friends and came back and was talking about how he's playing this game called StarCraft, and he would make like Marines or something and send them over and then like attack a base, and it was really difficult, etc. And I remember playing that and being super into it, and kind of the idea of BattleNet back then and being in a chat room was still foreign to a lot of people on the internet. So that was definitely a lot of fun. But I think like I remember playing. I'm gonna forget. It was one of the old school adventure games where it was Arabian themed, and you played a little. I think it was a white dude, like golden haired sprite with like a purple jacket. Kind of looked like a little bit like Aladdin. It was a pretty big like point in. It's from Sierra Games. I'm just blanking on the name. But I remember watching my brother play that stuff. It had like 32 floppy disks.
I think I know what you're talking about actually.
Yeah, like not King's Quest. It's get Terry or Tony or
All right.
one of them,
Yeah, Terry,
production.
Tone, Timmy, can you get on
Yeah,
that?
Timmy. Yeah,
All right, he's looking it up right now.
great.
Let's see, just sent me a list here. We've got Police Quest, Quest for Glory.
Quest for Glory 2. That might have been it.
Quest for Glory 2.
I believe that was it. That sounds like it would be it.
Yeah, it looks pretty Arabian theme from what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I remember playing that with my brother, or not necessarily playing it with my brother, but watching him play. That was kind of how I played a lot of games, or experienced a lot of games growing up. Was my brother kind of always got first stab at them. He would always get like the first playthrough, and so I would either have to watch, or as I got older, I would like when he would stop playing the game, I would start my game. So at like 1 a.m. or whatever, I would start my playthrough of it. And I want to say like with Final Fantasy 10 and then Final Fantasy 12, it got to a point where like whoever was further ahead after 15 or 20 hours, that was the person that got to finish the game because the other person would just watch. And so I remember like finally getting a little bit ahead of him in like Final Fantasy 10 and Final Fantasy 12 era and being super into it. And that was kind of like, I guess, console game wise when I first started getting into them, playing them, that is. But I've watched and experienced almost every old school NES and Super NES game with F-Zero and Mario Kart and all that shit. Broken multiple controllers over it, etc. So,
is your brother still like really into games, or does he not play as much?
he definitely plays a decent amount. He'll play a lot of the big AAA games. He doesn't really play anything like he doesn't play like a WoW or like a Warframe or anything like that. He's
Mhm.
more into, like God of War style experiences.
Yeah. All right.
He kind of, I think, with where the internet is now, he's pushing the age where he just doesn't want to deal with kids
Yeah.
on any level. So
Don't
he
want to
just
play
kind of,
Fortnite.
yeah. He's never touched Fortnite. He has no aspirations of ever playing Fortnite, etc. So
I can relate.
yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can.
Yeah. Um, so, did you ever play Warcraft 3? That's another one I wanted to ask. 'Cause I know you played
Yes, but I
StarCraft.
didn't play it. I didn't necessarily play it like I. What I played in Warcraft 3 was the single player, and then the multiplayer was like one of the issues I always have with StarCraft, and I think even StarCraft 2, which was kind of the biggest issue of the game, or still is today,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's just very intimidating to like go into a 1v1 scenario in that
Yeah.
game, and just
Mm-hmm.
RTSs in general. Um, so I never really got too big into kind of the. I would watch like the tournaments and stuff. I wouldn't know
Mm-hmm.
really what was going on because I didn't spend time understanding the build orders and whatnot. But I got pretty big into like the use map setting stuff in Warcraft. That's where I started playing Dota, like the
Mm.
original Dota, not Dota 2 or anything like that, but old school Warcraft 3 mod Dota.
Yeah.
And I probably put, I don't know, I know I had like at least 20 or 25 clan TDA accounts back in the day. I just played like a ton of Dota, and other UMS maps that were out there because I think that was kind of like it was the casual but yet hardcore. Like people loved playing those UMS maps. They were so much fun.
I think Warcraft 3 custom maps in general are like one of the most popular things about the game. Because, I mean, it
Yeah,
spawned
yeah,
Dota from it. And then we were playing some the other night, like me and Sam and everybody.
yeah.
And it's
They're
just
so
like,
fun. Like I remember, and that kind of started from at least for me from like my StarCraft days because UMS maps were so big there with like playing paintball or playing freeze tag, like those type of
mm-hmm.
maps were just so fun where you play like a ghost and it's paintball where you have a certain amount of shots, etc. um, and then of course you had like big game hunters with unlimited money and all that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely was big into playing Warcraft 3, but not necessarily kind of in the competitive spirit.
Do you think, I'm curious with StarCraft 2, what you think about their custom game type thing, like with the arcade? Like, have you tried it and enjoyed it, or like have you tried it and not liked it? Because I tried it, but I actually had more fun with Warcraft 3, even though it's like 14 years old.
Yeah, I never really got into it. The unfortunate circumstance for me with StarCraft 2 was that I was so embedded in kind of the esports world of that, having cast the game and having casted so many tournaments and whatnot, that the act of simply playing that game was kind of destroyed for me when
Mm-hmm.
all was said and done. So the UMS what do they call it? The arena? No, the arcade
Yeah,
mode.
the arcade.
Arcade mode came out kind of towards the end of my uh I'm gonna say career, but that's a really weird thing.
Yeah.
Kind of my time in StarCraft 2. And so I wasn't super interested in it. Like I I, I didn't want to play that and get I think at the time the reason was I didn't want to play the arcade mode because I felt like I would stop caring about the esports, like the competitive side of things, and I
Mm-hmm.
would fall behind in kind of knowing what was going on in like the meta of the game. Um, and I used to care a lot what people said about me back then. And
Yeah.
one of the things that was constantly said about casters, and I think is important and still said today, is like the person didn't know the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to give people ammunition against me for not knowing the game, by like going and looking at my profile to see what I was playing. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I just didn't play too much of the arcade stuff. But I've heard it's not that great, kind of like what you were saying, that a lot of people still prefer the Warcraft 3 stuff.
Yeah, like what I noticed is almost a lot of the games people make are just copies of Warcraft 3 custom games.
Oh,
It's
totally.
like,
Yeah.
so it's like, why not just go play them on Warcraft 3?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Um, so how about WoW? So like you're playing StarCraft, you're playing everything, but when did you get into WoW? Like, did your brother get you into that too?
No, well, I think WoW. I talk about this on stream a lot. World of Warcraft came out when I was, I think the beta started when I was either a freshman in high school or in the eighth grade, in the summer of the eighth grade, going into
Mm.
ninth grade, into freshman of high school. So I had played Dark Age of Camelot like religiously. I was super into kind of the hardcore 8v8 PvP world. I knew kind of all the big names that were associated with that, and played on one of the bigger servers in terms of people that were out there and kind of in that world, and happened to run in a couple of the groups. Um, for those, I guess, that would know what I'm talking about, I played with Fellowship of the Moose, FOTM, on Hibernia Guinevere, and went up against people like Relpoor um, and Rog, and names like that, which only people that played the 8v8 world kind of knew about any of those names. But
Hmm.
I got really involved in that. So then uh, I don't remember how I got in. It might have just been that, Blizzard wasn't as big as they are today, obviously, because WoW didn't, it wasn't a big thing yet.
Yeah.
But I remember, watching that original trailer, the one with the kind of the hunter in the snow,
Hmm.
and seeing that stuff, and I was immediately in. Like, MMOs were my life back then. I've basically played every MMO to ever release, up until a lot of the Asian MMOs started coming out the past couple of years. But I remember getting into the beta, and I still remember the first day of creating a an undead priest and walking out of the starting area of the undead, which is not too far from where we're currently fishing, and just being like kind of mind blown with what was like in front of me in terms of how it looked and how well it played and just how smooth everything was. And a lot
Hmm.
of those are probably like what's the saying, rose colored memories or whatever, like
Yeah, the rose
nostalgia.
tinted
That
glasses.
it probably fucking ran like shit, and it probably
Yeah.
was not fluid at all, but my mental image is that it was flawless.
Hmm.
And I remember just from that point on, like I absolutely loved everything about WoW. They could do no wrong as far as I was concerned. And I think one of the things about WoW players, especially someone who's been playing it since beta, is you criticize the game, but it comes from a place of like passion. But you're
Hmm.
still gonna say like, "Oh man, that was so shitty when you had to do, X, Y, and Z, blah blah blah." And I was also in high school back then, so much like anyone of that era that played MMOs, I was kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And so I was in guilds, I was hopping around and doing the raids that you could with stuff like Anixia and eventually BWL and all that stuff. But I never really got to. I think kind of the raiding guilds that were actually good at what they did were mostly like college kids at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was in a guild on Archimond Horde, the server, and it was mostly, like I said, college kids. So I never was really in kind of the core group of raiders. But every once in a while, they would take me on like a molten core run, or some sort of, filling a position. I played priest in beta, but on live I played a druid, which was just the worst mistake ever, because druids in vanilla were absolutely abysmal at anything except for healing and dueling.
Yep.
Um, and so I would go in there and heal every once in a while. I remember doing things like I'm gonna forget the bosses. What was the name of the boss that had all the rocks around it? That
Oh,
the pets, and then you'd get the bomb and you'd have to run.
is it Magmar? Which one was it?
Maybe.
Golmag? Not Golmag.
I mean, I guess you can pull up the. I mean, me.
Let's see.
It is. Uh, Gar.
Gar. Yeah.
Garr. He was one of the guys that dropped the Binding of the Windseeker. But anyways, I remember doing that boss for the first time in live attempts, and the server that I played on had a guild by the name of Nerfed, who eventually Blizzard hired like 90%, I want to say, of that guild for different things. And they went on to like do a bunch of its members went on to like create different raids down the line, et cetera, et cetera. And now it's become kind of a Blizzard guild for the most part. But I remember messaging their raid leader and thinking I was hot shit because I got the strat for Gar in terms of where to put the bomb in that room. And that kind of got me more raiding time in terms of more attempts on other bosses if we needed more healers and stuff. So ultimately, a very long-winded answer to your question that I've been playing WoW since beta and kind of loved almost every moment of it.
Did you play Horde from the start too?
I did, yeah. First character was an undead priest. Second character was a Tauren druid. I've played Alliance. What expansion was that? It was. I gotta look at the expansion names real quick.
It's TBC Wrath.
It was for Cataclysm. For Cataclysm, I played Alliance. I faction changed my 11 characters to Alliance. Yeah, all of them.
Oh my
because
God.
I'm the type of person that, at least back then, when your professions mattered, I had every profession like maxed out on those characters and whatnot, and banks and vaults across all the characters, etc. And I was a huge auction house nerd, so I would sit there and like run up the auction house and buy them out on different. Anyways, I faction changed all the characters, and then that lasted till I think the next expansion. I think Mist of Pandaria came out, and I faction changed all of them back to Horde.
Wow. That's actually Cataclysm. So it was right after Cataclysm you swapped everything back then.
Yeah. It was all of Cataclysm, and then right around pre-patch time, or kind of the weeks leading into Mist of Pandaria is when I swapped.
Is it just because you were gonna play with friends or something, or like?
The majority of it, yeah. The reason I faction swapped and moved servers for all the characters to a server named Frostmourne, which is an oceanic server, because the group that I was playing with at the time. And then I moved them all back to, I think I went to Mugthol, which is a server that back in the day, Archimond is where I started. And Archimond, they did those things where they opened up server transfers for free because the servers were too crowded. And Archimond had the option to go to Mugthol. And so that's where my guild went, and that's where I kind of called home for the longest time. So everything was on Mugthol. Then I went to, I want to say, did I say Frostmourne? Whatever the oceanic server was. I think it's Frostmourne. And now I'm on Emerald Dream. That's kind of where I went back after that when I started playing WoW with like Lyric and Shorty Guy and all them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at the start of Legion when I came to Emerald Dream. I don't know where I was in between. Might have gone back to Mugthol or something like that. I forget.
It's
I've been around.
I mean, at this point, it doesn't even matter. It's like everything's cross-realm, cross-server.
Right. Yeah. That kind of sucks because like server pride back in the day was a thing. Like being on Archimond was kind of like it was what Tichondrius I think is today in terms of like being the big PvP server. And so there was always like, oh yeah, I'm rank 14 on Archimond, blah blah blah. And it carried some weight to it, whether compared to like, yeah, you're rank 14 on a server with like no one. That's like a low pop server. Like it meant nothing. So I kind of missed that about WoW in terms of the servers carrying a little bit of weight, but they had to do what they had to do.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of missed that too, to be honest, because it was like you did have those communities, so you just have people there.
Like general chat mattered. Like you would recognize names in general chat, and you would know like the WoW forums for the servers meant something because there would be like ninja looter list of like assholes that you wouldn't invite to pug raids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now it just
have to
doesn't
like leave the town essentially and go to a different server.
Yeah, because LFR didn't exist back then, right? So you couldn't just queue up and go. You had to join the different chat channels or know of hidden ones, etc. Or kind of smaller communities to get into.
And I think a lot of guilds would even be like, oh, we can go to this new server, low pop server, and like level up and then be like the top guild on that server or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That happened a lot, especially when back when you used to get like achievements for like being the fastest to whatever the cap level was.
Mm-hmm.
You would get like server first achievements. So then Blizzard started implementing that rule where you had to be on like a server for 3 months or whatever before you could get the before you were eligible to get said achievements.
Yeah, I remember like way back. Well, this might even be before achievements or even a thing. There was some guy named like JoJo. It was like JoJo's leveling guide, and
Yeah,
he would
yeah.
always get to level 60 like
Yeah.
super fast.
Yeah,
It
that
was.
achievements came in, I think, during Wrath of the Lich King, so
Mm-hmm.
that was most likely before it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I just miss every like I definitely have nostalgia glasses on when it comes to like old school WoW, but I really wonder, and I don't necessarily like want to jump into this conversation because it's such a over talked conversation.
Yeah.
I really wonder what vanilla is going to be like.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do a lot of stuff to make it playable to what people expect from World of Warcraft these days.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about it a little bit because I think it's still important. We don't have to go like super in detail, but I think from what I from what I've gathered, I think a lot of people are going to play it right at the start. Obviously, there's going to be the
Sure.
people who they're like me and you, just want to go back and probably relive the nostalgia and be like, was it all nostalgia? Was it real? Like, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be people who hardcore play it, and then there's going to be people who just try it out and then quit. And then I think a lot of people will probably go back to it whenever like patches in the main game go dry or like there's no content to do. Like, hey, just hop on Classic WoW and play around.
Yeah. I think people will definitely have, like you said, like people will play live and they'll also play classic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one thing that I am pretty excited for because I kind of quit PvPing around like season 4, season 5. I just for whatever reason lost interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still remember back in the day, like the super fucking intense Warsong Gulch matches.
Yeah.
And because I played Druid, I was always the flag runner, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
like
that's right.
it was so like getting an organized like battleground group and queuing up against other or queuing up against another, just queuing up in general, and then you queued into another group was like some of the most fun stuff because everyone would open up the scoreboard and be like, "Oh shit, it's this group from this
Yeah.
server. Oh fuck, okay. Group one go to mill. Group two go to farm. Blah blah blah. Group
Mm-hmm.
three go to the center, and we'll see where we go, etc. Maybe send the rogue to go try to take mine or." With Warsong Gulch, there was always different strategies, like send the priest with the druid, etc. Like I really miss that stuff. That was
Yeah.
some of my favorite moments in WoW for sure. Is just doing those type of organized battlegrounds. It was a lot of fun, and I hope that stuff comes back.
Yeah, I do too. Because I mean, even back then, you didn't have PvP gear really in vanilla, unless you PvP'd and like would move up the ranks and get like the little pieces and stuff. But there was never like, resilience stats
Right,
until
resilience didn't
PvC.
matter. Yeah, what mattered is rocket boots, right?
Yeah.
What mattered is like what engineering trinkets you had.
Hmm.
That was kind of the big deal.
Yeah. So I'm kind of excited to go back and try that all out again too. And I'm gonna play a rogue and gank people in
Oh yeah,
STV.
like that's the
'Cause-
other thing too. There's like an unspoken. It was almost like they were in any fantasy world that you play in, or rather that has been created. It was almost like all rogues were a part of like a secret guild of just being assholes
yeah.
because they all did the same thing. Like they would all time their like kidney punches and like gouges to try to get like that perfect kill. And they would all do like the sidestep shimmy as they were doing it. Like that type of stuff I always saw from rogues and I never really saw from anyone else.
Yeah. It is. It's a special
And I
kind
miss
of.
it. Yeah, it's kinda cool.
Yeah, it's like playing a blue deck in Magic.
Yeah. It's a special type of person for sure.
Yeah. And even the old Alterac Valleys, I forgot about that too, where they last like
God.
10 days.
Yeah, like those are some of the craziest. I remember. Do you remember back when they put in the hammer before they nerfed the hammer? So like everyone was just getting permanently stunned.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like the first week or two that it was in, it was just the great. Like if you got that weapon, you were a fucking god. I hope I
Yeah.
can curse on there. I didn't ask
Yeah,
you.
it doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, like you were just unkillable. And then if you fought someone with it, it was just stupid. It was just like everyone was just permanently stunned. There's nothing you could do. It was so fun. I missed the old AV days for
Hmm.
sure when it would last forever.
Yeah. And I feel like I still enjoy the modern game. Like I still have fun. I've still been doing all the recent like BFA stuff and all that, but it is like a different game because it feels more
Oh
like
yeah.
a role playing game back then.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely felt like I I kind of feel like and maybe this was just because I was younger and I hadn't
Hmm.
experienced games in general or the masses kind of hadn't experienced WoW and played it to death, but it definitely felt like you were more connected to the world in a sense.
Hmm.
Whereas now you kind of feel like you're just passing by a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because like in for example in Legion, I don't have the same reverence for the leveling or a lot of the bosses. It's literally how fast can I get through this? Like how fast can I get to whatever I need to get to?
Yeah.
Whereas in Classic, it was like I'm gonna log in and I'm gonna go to Ashara and fuck around with the WoW gold farmers at the hippogriffs and just fuck around there and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And like that was so fun to just literally go out there and just watch these people fucking farm hippogriffs and just fuck with them. Like I had unbelievable amounts of fun. Like stealthing was so fun back then, stealthing around when no one could see you.
Hmm. I think
And
part of
nowadays you
that
just don't
definitely.
experience that shit.
Yeah. I mean, part of it definitely is because it was so unknown back then, or like
Yeah,
people hadn't, you didn't have data mining or like all this stuff we have today too.
yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of that ruins like the majority of stuff that's going to happen in BFA. Granted, the beta is also out there and stuff
Hmm.
like that, but the majority of stuff that's going to happen in BFA, most people know about in terms of story and all that stuff. So it's not the people that are hardcore look at all that stuff before the game ever comes out, so they know exactly what to do.
Hmm.
Because like the game's become a game of what's the fastest path to get this done, not necessarily hey, I'm going to experience this for the first time, and then I'll figure out the fastest way to get it done.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. I still enjoy the game a lot.
Yeah. Um, so let's talk about how you got into just the MLG stuff, because I'm kind of curious. So like you got into it because of WoW. So like did you like interview for this? Did you like apply for this? Did they contact you? Like how'd that happen?
Well, a lot of it started with a website called Got Frag, which was kind of an esports Counter Strike centric, I'll say, website back in the day. Kind of one of the most important Counter Strike website back in the day. And I started with them just as so they opened up a portal on their page to just get more traffic for general games. They had a site called Dpad, um, and I started with them writing game reviews. And I think, actually, funny enough, I should go back and my first ever like review that was ever published on that site was for Kingdom Hearts,
Oh
and I
wow.
just remembered that it might have been for Kingdom Hearts 2, but I just remembered that right now. And I've been doing a big Kingdom Hearts playthrough on my channel,
Hmm.
so I should dig that up. But yeah, I forgot kind of how I got into that. I think I just sent. Oh no, here I hung out in IRC. IRC was a huge thing back in the day.
Yeah.
For it's where I started in kind of all the WoW stuff, and I watched a lot of esports events back in the day. And one of the
Hmm.
bigger channels to kind of hang out in was a channel called Gotfrag. And so I hung out there, and I saw that they were looking for people to review games, and um, I'd always been into writing in school, so I sent an application with kind of a I forgot what the actual thing was, and I got a job with them in terms. Well, I say a job. I was never paid while I worked at Gotfrag. There was never money that
Hmm.
exchanged hands, and a lot of the job, while I still wrote articles and stuff like that, the majority of it was what we called the score grunt. And so you had a back end on Gotfrag, and you would sit there and just pull scores for Counter-Strike matches that happened anywhere in the world. So if a tournament was at like prime time Ukraine, we were up at 2 or 3 a.m. typing in the scores of saying like Nip beat Team 3D and won 2-0 on Aztec or whatever the fuck it was. And so we would sit there and enter all that stuff in the back end. And eventually, after about 9 or 10 months, they finally 9 or 10 months of just like being there and being trustworthy and just kind of always doing it, just being on the ball and making sure that those scores got entered. MLG at the time purchased Gotfrag, and when they purchased Gotfrag, I went along with them, and I was super into WoW, and so that's kind of where that whole thing started. In terms of me just being into World of Warcraft, and I attended BlizzCon, and I kind of knew a lot of the big PvPers, and we did the WoW podcast called ArenaCast. And they were like, I think we're going to do a World of Warcraft tournament and see how this goes for esports. And I remember the first tournament, which was, I want to say MLG Columbus. This is like 2011 or maybe 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like astronomical viewers. Like even today, like it was really good viewership for World of Warcraft because it had never been done before, right? And wow, this was kind of during the I don't know what season this was necessarily or what expansion it was during. I want to say that it was Wrath of Lich King, but it was definitely during like the heyday of World of Warcraft.
Yeah, like the peak of it.
Yeah, they had like the crazy sub numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tournament was a huge success, and did that for about a year. And then StarCraft 2 beta launched, and MLG immediately was like, hey, we want to jump on this. And so myself and at the time another person at the company that worked for Gotfrag that got picked up by MLG, who was a show director and kind of producer by the name of Mark Turner, was like, hey, we're going to do some stuff with StarCraft. What do you want to do? And so I said, well, let's do, I think showcase matches are good because we don't really know who's the best of the best is right now. But I definitely know some big names kind of in the StarCraft world, so let's get them. And I think the first match I ever did for the MLG, I think it was called King of the Hill Showcase Series, with myself and Day 9 casting, was between a guy by the name of Louder, spelled L-A, like louder than, or this is too loud, etc. It was Louder versus Artosis. And that was kind of where I started in the StarCraft 2 world. And I had already I'd already started the podcast State of the Game, which is kind of the big StarCraft 2 podcast. We did 100 episodes of that. And after about 2 years of all the travel and stuff, I just decided to bounce. I had to quit. I had to get out of there. It was too much. It's a lifestyle that I don't think I could ever go back to. And esports is so different now these days. So it's probably vastly different, and I probably couldn't go back just because the talent is so much better out there. But it was definitely a lot of fun. It was just it was an interesting job, I guess is how I'll put it.
Yeah. And so I take it that just kind of led into live streaming and doing all that then too.
Yeah, at that point I'd been doing State of the Game for so long. And I knew my way around more so than most people at the time. I knew how to, put together a show in XSplit, and I knew how to stream games that looked really good in terms of like the stream setting and stuff. Before it was all, it's so much easier these days to download OBS or install XSplit than it was back then. And there aren't kind of as many tricks as there were back in the day to make your stream look really good for cheap bandwidth cost, etc. So it definitely allowed me to kind of jump ahead of all that stuff. Plus I had an installed user base, right? Like I had, I think during some of the biggest shows, State of the Game had like 20,000 viewers back in the day, which today is really good viewership, and back then was just like astronomical. So it definitely helped a lot with all that stuff. I was able to jump into the streaming world 5 or 6 years ago, kind of ahead of the game, and it luckily it worked out. So
I think that's the big thing too, is like having an audience to direct to something like Twitch. Like I still don't know how I would get big on like a platform like Twitch without already having that, like the YouTube audience where I was like, hey everybody, come watch me on Twitch, and then it just, snowballs.
yeah, it definitely takes something unique, whether you're doing it or whether you get a host from a big streamer one day. Like that's the type of thing I think that makes streams these days is just knowing someone, getting a big host, or trying to stand out in a crowd of in a sea of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super difficult. The other thing is I don't like giving advice to like how can I become a streamer, because when I did it, I was so privileged in the sense of like having an already established user base. And um, like the first couple of streams that I did, even when I worked at MLG as a caster and a show host and producer, I would still stream StarCraft 2, and just because of the fact that I was on MLG and stuff, people would watch it. And it was already like 1,000 viewers. So
Mm-hmm.
I always started with people watching, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there was never a point where I had to build an audience. So it was unbelievably privileged. And I can't really tell people how to stream or how to get started because it's so fucking different now. It's a completely different industry in terms
Yeah.
of starting out. So I usually just don't give that much advice.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's like a very topical question that you'll get asked, just whether you're streaming or on YouTube or whatever it is. So it's like, how do you get into it? And
Yeah.
it's like it's such a vague question to such a complicated answer. Like there's so many things that do go into. There's luck involved. There's
Yeah.
like just know your past, like making videos, doing big events, or working for people. There's like collaborating with other people. There's just like it's and then staying consistent with it all on top of it. It's a loaded question essentially.
Totally. It really is. And I think there are things you can do to like maximize your luck,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a sure thing. Like there's no direct path to being successful on the internet. It's there's so many factors. But you can do your best to make sure that you're, checking all the right boxes to make sure that if something does happen, the big break will potentially go in your favor over someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm kind of curious. What's your longest running sub on your channel?
um, I want to say we have a couple like 76 and 77 month folk.
Oh wow.
I I don't know if we have anyone in the 80s. It's like one person. It's very low 80s.
Hmm.
But I want to say it's like high 70s. I don't know I know there's actually, funny enough, I know there's a Blizzard employee that's like 76
Oh wow.
that I met back in the StarCraft days, or at least that knew me from the StarCraft days,
Mm-hmm.
that eventually got hired at Blizzard and stuff. And every time he resubs it, I recognize his name and talk to him, etc. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's high 70s for sure. I think the longest sub on Twitch is someone to Day 9 or Tally or Dan. I think they were kind of the first batch to get sub badges on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
That
think I
probably
got
is in
mine
the
in like
80s.
do what?
And that would probably be in the 80s then, I think.
Yeah, they're low 80s. I think is the highest longest sub.
Damn. Yeah, I think right now I got a couple people about to hit 60, but it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of crazy because there's so many like people in the newer wave of Twitch. Because I was streaming with Pluto, and Pluto is like, "Oh wow, you got like a 31 monthers, quite a while," and I was like,
Yeah, yeah, that happens a lot. I always get or quite frequently, I get the person in chat that will is new to Twitch or hangs out in a lot of streams where the subs are all Twitch Prime. So, like you said, there's no like, or there's not very many long time subs.
"Yeah,
Um, And so they'll join the channel, and someone will drop like a 40 or 50 month sub, which we have a very large amount. I would say a large, more than 30-40% of the people are in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll drop that, and I just won't say anything because I'm trying to focus on the game, and I don't want to, I don't want to interrupt what's going on. And that person will get like real uppity in chat, like, you're not even grateful for 40 months sub, blah blah blah. And I have to explain to the person, or my mods will have to explain to people, like, we have like multiple 60-month people, 70-month people on the channel. So
well, it's crazy how big everything's gotten and how oversaturated just the market for streamers and online entertainers has become.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it, like, Twitch Prime really changed streaming in I don't, not a good or bad way. I mean, it's good in the sense that there's more people that can do this as a job. But it's definitely like people work for that, like streamers work for that Prime sub. And it can, there's streamers out there that'll have like crazy arcs in terms of like yearly revenue, where 1 month they'll get 12 or 10,000 new subs, and then the next month all those people go to someone else.
Yeah.
Right. So it's super unstable in that way. So it's a weird thing, but Twitch Prime is definitely like one of the biggest things I think has happened in a very long time for our industry.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I guess that's why it's so important to have so many sources of revenue on top of that, which I remember TB would always tell me that. He was like, I have at least 5 sources of revenue.
That sounds like TB. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing it wrong.
Unfortunately, YouTube is just so fucking awful these days. That I'm not even sure if you can count it as like a reliable income.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how stupid it's gotten.
Yeah, like I remember even when I started like 10 years ago on YouTube, it was like I really enjoyed YouTube. It was fun. I loved it, and now it just feels like it's like the big corporations running over you, where they're like, hey, we could promote your videos, but here's a video from this rapper guy, or like Martha Stewart.
The best way I tell people these days is like, I used to care about what went on or what I put on YouTube, but now it's literally just a place where I put VODs, and I like very little work goes into them because it's just not like the amount of work that you have to put in to like actually grind YouTube is just astronomical. It's a full-time job to sit there and deal with like copyright strikes. The amount of fucking hoops that you have to jump through for that shit is crazy. And I just don't, I'm in the position, luckily, that I just don't have to worry about that shit. I just put a video up, and if it gets claimed, oh well, right? Like, I just move on. Whereas a lot of people, I think, that are starting out, like, every video is so unbelievably important that it's just impossible. I couldn't imagine having to deal with that stuff. It would be a fucking giant headache.
Yeah. Just being like, oh, I want to put this video up, but it has like 10 seconds of a song. Is this going to get claimed?
Oh yeah, no, that happened yesterday. I even tweeted it, but it's like such a common occurrence that everyone's like, well, cool story, man. I put up an 8-hour, because I streamed all the Kingdom Hearts, like I was saying. A lot of people were like, hey, are you ever going to put these up on YouTube? And I said, when I finish, I would. So I got to kind of, I haven't finished it yet. I still got a couple games, but I got to a point where it makes sense. And so I just started throwing like 8-hour chunks of the entire stream from a day instead of breaking in different parts. And a 2-minute Utada song of Simple and Clean claimed the entire 8-hour video. And it's like, I can't, you can't submit any, like, everyone's heard these stories before where it's like, well, you can't go up against a fucking record company because they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're nobody to them. But yeah, it's like, oh, those went up. Okay, cool. Stop spamming my fucking email. Like, I understand that I have 13 claims from these 3 videos, but just stop. I don't care.
Yeah. It's crazy just how much it's changed in even just a few years. Not even like...
Yeah. I remember you mentioned Totalbiscuit. We back when I first started doing role play, he was kind of the catalyst when I quit MLG. I just wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of like, well, you know, I'm sad. I don't have a job. Blah blah
Yeah.
blah. I'm just gonna play WoW and live on this money that I saved working at MLG, etc.
Hmm.
And John actually messaged me and was literally like, "Hey, what are you fucking doing? Like, go like do something. Don't just like sit there and wallow because you decided to leave MLG and you don't have anything going for you." So that's when I created roleplay. And I remember after a couple months of roleplay, me and John kind of always had this thing where we would try to like one up each other, always try to compare.
Hmm.
And I could never compare it to like his YouTube sub count. It was just
Right.
astronomical. Um, but one thing that I could compare it to was we got into kind of a couple discussions discussing how much we were making each month. And I would tell him, and he'd go like, "How the fuck are you doing that? Like, what do you? That makes no sense because that's close to what I'm doing." And I told him it was because he wasn't doing sub rolls or sub ads. I mean, mid rolls is the word I'm looking
Oh
for.
yeah, mid rolled.
Yeah, because all of my videos were like hour or more, right?
Mhm.
So I would have like 2 or 3 mid rolls in each video, and the average video on YouTube doesn't. It's like what 10 minutes I think now,
Yeah,
or
like
8
10
minutes or
minutes.
something like that.
Mhm.
And so mid rolls were just these huge cash cows that no one used, and that was all that I used, right? So my retention in terms of like viewership on each video was something like 26 minutes or something like that, which is absurd.
Yeah.
And so he started doing a little bit long form videos. Like his WTFs got a little bit longer and he started rolling more mid rolls. And then I could never catch up to him after that.
Yeah.
Once I kind of told him that. So it was always fun. Like, I think TB is responsible for a lot of people's success in that way, where he
Yeah.
just, he just told people to fucking do something. Like,
Yep.
just stop wallowing in your bullshit and just do something.
Yeah. I think he was a very blunt man.
Yeah, yeah.
That was his thing.
In a way, like that's where I think I got the idea that it was okay to be as blunt as he was.
Mhm.
And for the longest time, I like mismanaged my bluntness to the fact that it became like, oh, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
So I always kind of admired that about John, is that he could be blunt, but it was in the most professional ways possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the right way to go about it. I enjoyed still just poking him with a stick.
Oh
just
yeah.
to really get him riled up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It
But-
was always fun, without a doubt.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should finish with your best favorite. I'm thinking of other words I can use, but I can't. WoW memory.
My favorite WoW memory of all time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's the easy answers are killing some of the earlier bosses in the game, and as a guild, and kind of the nerd cheers that would happen, killing like Sith or Cthulhu, and being there for those type of kills were always fun.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely remember there was a time where we were playing Horde, or I was on the Horde side, and someone was getting married in Wintergrasp. We went up there and like killed the entire wedding party. They were all Alliance. That was definitely fun. But honestly, I think, and I've told the story on my stream before, so viewers of mine probably have heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the Gates of Encourage World event, which was, for those that didn't play back then or not familiar with it, Blizzard, it was probably like one of the best like pre-patch events for a raid that I've ever really seen. It was these massive amounts of reputation grinds. It's kind of a faction where you would just turn in trade skill stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like rune cloth and different herbs and different potions and all that shit, in order to increase kind of the war effort going on in Silithus.
Oh yeah, I
think
remember that.
if I remember the gist of it.
Yeah.
And alongside that, there were quests that at the end of all of it would result in a singular person or anyone that turned it in. I think it was either 10 or 24 hours after the first person finished the quest line. They would get a Encourage like insect mount. So the mounts that you can only use in Encourage today, they would get one that could be used anywhere in terms of a ground mount. Flying didn't exist yet. And my guild, Void on Mugthul, was the number one guild on the server. And so our guild leader was the one that was going to get the mount. It was the one that kind of the faction, the horde, and it, as a whole, decided to kind of push forward for that stuff. And there was an alliance guild that was doing the same thing, that was trying to push to be the one to kind of open that stuff to get their guild leader the stuff. And these quests were very involved, and you had to go all around the world, and no one knew a lot of the quest chains, so they just kind of had to, do the quest as we got them. And there was a part in Undercity where, and both Horde and Alliance, so there was stuff in like Stormwind where Horde had to go to Stormwind to do this stuff, and there was stuff where Alliance had to come to Undercity to do things that could only be done in Undercity. And there was a little item that was on the ground that you had to click, and we got to that part first. And I remember, and I still have these characters, and they're still in like spirit form or whatever, over the place where it occurred. But we found out that if you died on top of this item, your corpse would block the item from being interactable. So then the Alliance couldn't move forward with the quest. And so my guild put like 30 corpses on top of it, right? Because then they couldn't loot the item. So I still have two characters, both of them Taurens. It was something. I wish I could remember the Alliance's guild name, but it was maybe they're called KT. They might have been Knights Templar, maybe. And the guild name was like FUKT, or sorry, the character name was like FUKT. Or no, that couldn't have been it, because that spells out fucked. That would have definitely gotten picked up by
Yeah,
Blizzard.
that would have.
It was something to the essence of like screw you KT, or like haha KT, or something like that, making fun of the guild. And I just remember, sitting there in ghost form for like hours upon hours upon hours until Blizzard finally responded to the ticket to get the corpses moved. Or to push the Alliance into another instance or something. Whatever they did, I never really figured out how. But it was just, there were like ventrilo meetings that happened between the two guild leaders and their officers, like trying to get us to move our shit. And it was just like back and forth griefing, and like that type of stuff was so much fun. Where it was just like, it was griefing, but it was like you were doing it for your faction.
Yeah.
And like people would message me and be like, haha, I can't believe I don't know who this person is, but it's hilarious that like you're doing this and screwing the Alliance over, etc. It was that's definitely, that's the one thing I think about a lot. Like I wish I was a YouTuber. I wish I kind of was in the world of streaming back then, because that stuff was just fucking hilarious to me. It was so funny. It was so funny.
And that ties into the whole like server-based community thing again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man, the forum post on like the general forum or the server forums were just hilarious. Just like saying, "Fuck Void, you guys are fucking assholes. Like, how could you block this shit? We're gonna get you banned. Yada yada yada." And we ended up winning. We ended up getting Cart was the guild leader's name of Void back in the day, and he ended up getting the mount on the server, and we got it first. It's just glorious. It's just so much fun. I enjoyed that so much.
That is pretty great. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that happening.
Yeah, I love that type of shit. I was always the asshole that would grief and do kind of questionable things in the game like that.
and you've carried that torch to this day.
I have. I'm still that guy out there exploiting everyone and everything. No, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's a good place to stop. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. So where can people find you on the internet?
Sure. You can just go to Google and type in ItmeJP. I'm most prominently on Twitch, twitch.tv/ItmeJP, ItmeJP, no S.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm out there. We do a show called Drop Frames every Wednesday, which is just your general gaming podcast with myself, Co-Carnage, and Ezekiel the Third. And then I do role play, which is kind of your tabletop gaming show. We have 3 shows right now. We have Court of Swords, which is our 5th edition D&D show, which is on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock Eastern. We have Far Verona, which is your space sci-fi show, which is on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock Eastern. And then we've got Jesse Cox's show, Roleplay Oddballs, which is on Thursdays at 3 o'clock Eastern. And that's kind of what's going on. Doing a big 24-hour stream for BFA, so if you're going to be playing that, feel free to drop by the stream. I think we've got like $4,500 worth of giveaways that we'll be doing.
Oh, dang.
I'm looking forward to it. I still think one of the best things in gaming is World of Warcraft expansions. That first and second week of every expansion is just glorious. It's always a ton of fun.
It always hooks everybody back in too, because even like you haven't hit the end game yet, so people don't get burned out either. So even just the first month in general is just great.
That's great. That's great. Hey, that rare spawned again that we killed before we started.
Oh yeah, he's back.
Fuck this guy. All right, we're out of here.
All I wanted was a little peace and quiet.
Appreciate you inviting me on. By the way, it was fun.
No problem. It was fun. You can also check out Daikia, the best of the roleplay series.
Yeah. If you want to
JP's
see
channel.
Crendor DM, check out Roleplay Daikia.
It's just as crazy and bad as you think.
Good times.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll put all of JP's stuff in the description below. If you want to check out any other fishing with Crendors, there's 38 of them. I've probably fished with somebody you know: Asmongold, Northern Lion, Ego Raptor, Adam Coble, who does roleplay stuff. You can check it all out. Brandon Sanderson I fished with, which was kind of crazy. So yeah, check those out. Check out JP. And I'll see you on the next episode. I never know how to end these, so I'm just gonna stop. See ya.